Hi friends, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. Here's what we're discussing today. It is an absolute truth in this world that if you play with fire, sooner or later you are going to get burned. And if you lie down with dogs, you are some days going to wake up with fleas on you. And unfortunately, criminal lawyers sometimes forget that truism. Nicole Fegan, who represented Tenquarius Mender in the YSL RICO trial, she actually had him severed from the young thug portion of this trial. She has been charged with criminal street gang activity and criminal solicitation to commit the offense of tampering with evidence. Now, according to the Atlanta Police Department, and keep in mind this is only one side of the story, Fegan was brought to the attention of investigators during the investigation of a double shooting that occurred back in September of 2022. Investigators say that Fegan contacted one of the people involved and told him about an active warrant for his arrest. It's perfectly appropriate to do that if you're concerned about someone and you want to make sure that they don't get hurt during an arrest. But you also have to be careful about violating the ethical rules because, as it turns out, he already had another lawyer. Later, during a preliminary hearing, it was revealed that Fegan had told the man to dispose of his phone before police arrested him. Now, Fegan has a defense attorney of her own. She's posted $40,000 in bail, and she's been released from jail. But these are the allegations that are sort of circulating around, and I think it has, as some of the local media have pointed out, caused her to have a fall from grace. And in 2019, she was cited in an article in Atlanta Attorney at Law magazine, and it said that she was among the new generation of criminal defense attorneys. And that's a good thing, to be considered an up-and-coming defense attorney. And it's certainly good for your reputation. It probably gets you plenty of clients. And the nice thing is, if you're recognized by your peers, good things will happen. If you are arrested and charged with a crime as a part of your representing clients, that tends to diminish your standing in the legal community. Less than a month before the police say that Fegan cold called this murder suspect to tell him about the arrest warrant and to tell him to dispose of his phone, again, allegedly, she was in Fulton County representing Daquan Reed in a high-profile trial. He was ultimately convicted, but she got high marks for doing a good job for him. Everybody thought that her representation was top-notch. So why is Nicole Fegan in such hot water? Well, because as an officer of the court, she is not allowed to counsel anyone to commit a crime, and tampering with evidence is a crime. Now, defense attorneys often walk a very fine line in situations where somebody contacts them about an active warrant or pending arrest. The lawyer may know or believe that they have damaging material on their phone, and the client may very well know that too, and they may ask, "Can I just throw my phone away?" Well, here's where things get dicey. Because if the lawyer says yes, without also saying, but if you do that, they'll get you for tampering with evidence, then she's probably soliciting them to dispose of the evidence. That is a crime. If the person says, should I throw away my phone, it's even worse. Then the lawyer has to say, no, you should not throw away your phone. That would be tampering with evidence. And even though that's probably not the result that the client wants, even though they would very much like to throw away their phone, again, if they do that, they're going to get caught. They probably have a contract with a cell phone provider, and the state will be able to go out and subpoena all of the local cell phone providers and find that person's cell phone. And if they know that they have a cell phone, then in most cases they are going to be able to charge the person with tampering with evidence because they disposed of the phone. Not a good look, not a good thing, and you don't want to add to your client's problems. if they're going to get convicted on the issue that they are already charged with, you don't want to add another crime to their list of crimes. That is working against your client, not for them. But as I said, we've only heard one side of the story to this point. We've heard what the Atlanta police and the prosecutors say. That doesn't mean that that's necessarily the gold standard for truth and verity. Now, Fegan is representing street criminals. These are not PhD candidates. You are not going to find them defending their dissertation at Emory University. The charges against her are for street gang activity and soliciting for tampering with evidence, but here's the deal. When that potential felon is arrested, he's put in a room, and shortly thereafter he starts having contact with detectives. And as we've said on this channel numerous times, detectives don't always play fair. And thank God for that, because frankly, I don't really want to see a lot of criminals out on the street. I think that jail is a really good place for people who break the law. But they put a lot of pressure on defendants and get them to talk. But the other thing is, there are a lot of people, particularly in the thug life, who think that their job in an interrogation is to pimp the police officers. They like to talk a little smack to the police officer. And they'll say things like, "I knew you guys were coming. A lawyer told me." Now, Fegan was not his lawyer, as I said, and as a result, she had no business offering him any advice at all. Lawyers that intrude into another lawyer's relationship are often sanctioned by the bar. But by the same token, if he said, "I can't get a hold of my lawyer, can you help me?" in most jurisdictions, the giving of advice to a criminal client in crisis can be forgiven. When I talked about walking a fine line, I have to tell you it's completely possible that Fegan did absolutely nothing wrong. And while I have a little doubt about that for reasons I'll discuss in a minute, here's how she could have done everything right. And if the guy says, "Well, she told me this," the police are going to believe him about that. They won't believe he's not guilty of the crime. They're not going to believe him when he says that. But when he says the lawyer's bad, they're going to listen to that, because now they have an opportunity, perhaps, to throw a good lawyer off of another case. So here's what she could have said. "I learned that you have an active warrant and you need to call your lawyer and make plans to turn yourself in, because if they arrest you, you could get hurt. And keep in mind, if they are really investigating gang activity, they send the gang unit to go make the arrest. What does the gang unit come with? They come with the bang unit. The bang unit being the SWAT team, the flashbang unit. They throw in flashbangs and they come at 3 o'clock in the morning. They kick in the door, and oftentimes it's the criminal's mother's door, because a lot of these guys live at home, and they make a mess of the house. They run in with big guns. They stick them in people's faces. And every now and again, somebody does something completely stupid and pulls a gun and decides to fight back. And that's when people get hurt. So it is completely ethical to think about your client's well-being and say, "Look, you don't want to fight the police. They're going to come get you at some point. So just go turn yourself in." That's completely appropriate. Now, the rumor is that she learned of the warrant representing one of the YSL defendants, and unless the warrant was sealed, she's entitled to communicate that information to another person. She hasn't been charged with violating a court seal, so it's likely that it wasn't a sealed warrant. She could have continued her discussion with the young man like this. Now, I want you to understand the criminal process here, because it has implications for your defense by your lawyer. If you turn yourself in with your phone in your hand, they will seize it and get a warrant and search it. And frankly, sometimes they just skip the warrant and seize it and search it anyway. Don't make it easy for them. Don't show up with your phone. Make them get a search warrant and go find your phone and seize it. Now, up to this point, that's completely legal. And if the PhD candidate at this point says, maybe it would be even better if I just tossed my phone in the river, then that's on him. If she didn't tell him, "Get rid of your phone," well, then she didn't do anything wrong. Up to this point, she's done nothing wrong. However, if she does that because in the other case, she knows that the potential felon here has communicated with her client and said things that could be considered evidence to be used against her client in a conspiracy charge, then if that can be proved, she's engaged in conspiracy as an accessory after the fact, and that's how she draws the gang charge. So if she did it for an improper purpose, if she wasn't trying to think of him, if she did it because she really does essentially work for the gang, then it's appropriate for her to draw a gang charge in that situation. But again, nothing has been proved at this point. Now, as I said, I've considered that she's innocent until proven guilty, and that hasn't happened. But I wanted to offer my thoughts about how some lawyers, and sometimes that's female lawyers, sometimes it's male lawyers, they get in trouble because they get manipulated by their clients or by their own urges. And I'm talking about lust here. Sometimes that happens. A few years ago, an Oklahoma attorney who was sleeping with her client before he was arrested brought him cigarettes and a cell phone in her briefcase to the jail. Now, of course, her briefcase can't be searched when going into the jail because it contains client confidential materials. But in this case, the client confidential materials were actually contraband. But being as how this person is such a genius that he can get himself thrown into jail, what in the world would make her think that he's going to be smart enough to keep this away from the authorities? So Genius Loverboy gets caught with the smokes because guess what? In a non-smoking jail, people can smell it when you smoke. And he gets busted for the cell phone, and he says, "My lawyer gave it to me." Now, she gets charged. She pleads guilty to bringing contraband into the jail. I believe it's a misdemeanor. She draws some kind of sentence for that. I don't think she went to prison. But she wound up getting disbarred as a result. And interestingly enough, sort of the as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story, interesting enough, is she was a teacher before she became a lawyer. And she met this kid when she was the teacher, and she slept with him when she was a teacher. And so she may not be the best example of somebody who gets manipulated. She may have been doing a little manipulation herself, and she may have taught the client to manipulate her. Who knows? When I clerked for the Missouri Supreme Court, I was amazed at some of the arguments that public defenders would make about their cases. In many cases, the arguments they made were clearly foreclosed by case law. They were stretching authority well past the breaking point, and the arguments were just generally embarrassing to listen to. And I asked the judge that I worked for about it, and he said, look, a lot of these folks would gladly throw themselves under the bus for these criminals. They become far too personally involved, and as a result, they wind up doing things that are both unethical, sometimes illegal, and it's one of the reasons why when certain people come up here, we just believe they have no credibility because they've already damaged their credibility by going off on a limb like this for some of their clients. So, in my personal opinion, based on both her actions that got her arrested and on her content on her TikTok channel, I would say she is way too personally involved with this YSL group. Now, when I started as a lawyer, I was told you can't have a client give you an endorsement or appear in an advertisement. The model rules have been changed since then to say that it's okay to have that kind of thing happen as long as the advertisements are not misleading. That's why when you speed down the highway at 70 miles an hour, you'll see the foot-tall print on the billboard that says, the Billy Bob's law firm here got me $100,000 in my slip and fall case. And then down below it, in probably 12-point type that you would have to have a telescope to read from the highway, it will say something like, you can't generalize these results to all cases, or your results may vary, some restrictions may apply, that sort of thing. That usually say, what I would point out is usually the disclaimers are in print much smaller than the advertisement or the endorsement. It is okay for a client to appear in an endorsing advertisement. And I'm not sure this is necessarily an endorsing advertisement. He apparently put this on his TikTok channel and then she picked it up and put it on her TikTok channel. So it probably doesn't violate any rules. But what it does is it says, I'm looking for a certain kind of client. So if I was arrested for fraud or perjury or some other white-collar crime, this is not the lawyer I would hire. And she probably wouldn't be very good in that. But when it comes to defending people in the street life, she obviously seems to have the inroads there to get the job done. Now, I would point out I had to edit the audio in this to remove stuff that would get my channel demonetized.
All right, this for all y'all keep asking me what's up with my lawyer, man. She the fucking GOAT, dog. Like, so if you out here thugging you in the streets, you got any kind of cases, and you ain't went and paid her no retainer fee, you sleep, you out here living reckless, you tripping, dog.
Now, in addition to that TikTok, there is one here that shows the lawyer dancing and hawking her merchandise that says "Got Proof." Now, if I was charged with soliciting for the tampering of evidence, I don't think I would want my signature logo to be "Got Proof," because a reasonable jury might very well think, her solution to everything is to have the clients get rid of the proof. Boom, convicted. I just can't believe she's left this up. Lawyers are one of the few professions where you have to pass an exam on the ethical rules before you are allowed to practice. The questions are difficult and they require you to know the bright line rules. And the bright line rules are also foul lines. If you step over them, you draw a flag, usually from the bar, but sometimes you will draw a conviction for doing something that is criminal. You step over them and you get disbarred. That's the rule. There's another fundamental reason why this lawyer should have stayed out of the other case with the other felon. Her duty is to her client in the RICO case. She should be concerned only with his case and his well-being. If she has now been charged, it's a fair bet that the prosecutors will ask to have her disqualified from further representation of her RICO client because she may well be conflicted, having voluntarily undertaken duties to clients with opposing interests. If you have 5 people charged with conspiracy, each one of them has to have a separate lawyer because it is in the interest of every one of those 5 to throw the other 4 under the bus. So, for that reason, you have to have lawyers who are not conflicted, who aren't trying to represent 2 people in a situation like that. Even if she is ultimately exonerated on these charges, which could certainly be the case, she's still going to have to be concerned with her own trouble while she's representing her client in the YSL case. Normally, if you are an attorney and you are advising a client, nothing that you say to the client, nothing the client says to you can come into evidence. However, there is an exception to the attorney-client privilege, and that exception is called the crime-fraud exception, where the client attempts to use the lawyer's advice or the lawyer's office to commit a crime or a fraud. And here, that crime-fraud exception could cause problems for keeping material that was communicated to the attorney secret. Now, I doubt very seriously if there would be a need to get to that information, but if there was, the attorney-client privilege might be obviated, basically, by the fact that she's criminally charged. She's part of the conspiracy, and her communications within the conspiracy are at issue. So that makes it bad not only for her client, that's the RICO client, and the guy who's charged in the 2022 shooting, but also for her. It's just not a good situation to be in. A really good criminal defense lawyer I knew before he died, he would frequently tell clients, here's the deal. You've been arrested. You have the possibility of going to prison. You are now in a lawyer-client relationship with me because you've paid my retainer. You have some responsibilities in our relationship, and I have some too. Your responsibility is to tell me the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, and don't leave anything out. And then you have to listen to my advice. If you go against my advice, I'm going to withdraw. If you lie to me, I'm going to withdraw. If you lie to the court during testimony, I'm going to withdraw. If you ask me to do something illegal, I'm going to withdraw. And if I withdraw, you are not going to get your retainer back, and then you'll have to find other counsel. And then he had them sign a contract that required them to abide by those rules. As a lawyer, that's how you protect yourself. Now, my license sits up there on the wall above my desk, and I see it every day. I worked long and hard to get it. I invested over $40,000 in 3 years of my life in getting it, and I'm not going to put that license in jeopardy by doing something I know to be unethical or illegal. I've had lots of clients, and I've loved them all as people just the way Jesus taught me. But I would never put my freedom, my livelihood, and my relationships with my family at risk by going out on a limb and doing something unlawful or illegal for someone else because they are in a problem, or they have a problem. I'm not going to do something risky to help them out. I'm going to play it straight because that's me. I'm a straight arrow. And if you want somebody who's going to shoot the angles on a case, you want a different lawyer. You don't want me. Because here's what I know about secrets. 2 people can keep a secret if one of them is dead. In Fegan's case, if the guy bragged that he destroyed the phone and that he did it because Fegan warned him, even if she did everything right and manages to avoid a conviction, her reputation's going to be damaged and she's going to face bar sanctions. And the really sad thing is, she could have avoided it all. Well, that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below, or if you would like, you can email me at the address above. And I would point out that if you email me a request for a video, I will certainly consider doing it if it's within my ability to do. And a lot of times that's how these videos get made, because people ask for a particular video. So I would, again, appreciate and welcome any comments, and I try to get to my comments on the weekend, but I'm not always successful. So if I don't answer your email or I don't answer your comments, it's not because I don't love you. It's because I haven't had time to get to them, because I work during the day too. I do this part-time and I work part-time, so sometimes those two just don't work out for me to get to the comments, especially since the channel has grown so much this year. Thank you again for watching, and if you have the opportunity today, do something nice for someone. And one of the things that I've been remiss about is pointing out that it is perfectly appropriate for you to do something nice for somebody you love. My job in our house in the mornings is to fix breakfast and to prepare my wife's lunch, because she goes and takes a shower, she irons her clothes, she gets dressed, she gets ready for work, she sits down, she eats breakfast, she grabs her lunch and heads out the door. Well, my job, like I said, is to fix lunch, so I usually fix her a salad, which is what she asks for. And then when I put it into the bag and send it with her, I usually attach a little note on top of it. This morning I wrote very simply, "You are wonderful," and I drew a little heart on there. Now, that's silly, and I realize it's kind of mushy, but the fact of the matter is, my wife loves that. And you should always do things that make people smile if you can. It doesn't cost you anything. Well, I guess it cost me 1 piece of sticky note paper, but it's absolutely worth it. I found the other day that my wife has posted all of these notes that she brings home and sticks them on the inside of the cabinet door, and she sticks them on the inside of the cabinet door at work, which I find to be pretty hilarious. But it means something, and it is a good thing when you can make somebody else's day and when you can make them smile. So again, I would urge you to do that, and if you would, you can then come on back and catch me down here at the beach again next time. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.